Today we're going to cook the perfect sirloin. I have a foolproof way to cook a perfect steak, and it works for all kinds of cut. Sirloin is the cut we're going to use today. So what I have done is I've taken the sirloin steaks and I have rubbed in pepper, coarse salt, and a little garlic powder. As you see, these are 1.5 inch thick cut sirloin steaks. And what we're going to do is we're going to cook them a perfect way, using the oven first and finishing in a wrought iron cooking frying pan. So I'm going to insert a meat thermometer when they go in the oven. I'm going to set the oven for 250 degrees. And I'm going to let the steaks bake slowly until the internal temperature of the meat gets to 120. Once they get to 120, we're going to pull them out of the oven. We're going to let them rest. We are going to then heat up some wrought iron, cast iron frying pans. Cast iron is, I think, the proper word. And once the frying pans get red hot, we're going to then put a big sear on the steak. What it does by cooking in the oven first is it cooks it all the way through to a medium rare degree. Now, if I brought the temperature up to 100 degrees before I fried them, it would be rare. 110 degrees would be medium rare. But 115 to 120 degrees is a little pinker medium rare. Not quite medium, that would be 130 to 135 degrees. So we're going to go to an internal temperature of 120 degrees in a 220 degree oven. And once they get to 120, we'll pull them out and I'll show you what we're going to do next. Okay, now when we get ready to cook these steaks, I've got a ThermoPro internal thermometer, which I love because I can take this one and clip it on my belt and it'll tell me what's going on in the oven, and I can set an alarm on it. So I'm going to plug the probe in to the ThermoPro sender, and I'm going to cut it on, and I'm going to cut on the receiver. And as you can tell, the temperature right here in the kitchen is 73 degrees. This is going to go into the meat. I have this preset. I wanted the meat to be medium rare. So in a 250 degree oven, it's going to be 120. So I've preset this. You can go up or down on this to set the different degrees of temperature. I've got it set to 120. So when it reaches 120, the screen is going to flash red, and it's going to set alarm, and I'll know it's time to take the meat out of the oven. So for now, I'm going to insert this probe. I'm going to come over here to the steak. I'll probably select this one right here on the end. And the probe, I know if I go into this elbow, it's going to be about that far into the meat. So I'm going to go straight in to the meat, all the way up to the elbow, and that's what we're going to put into the oven. So now it's time to put them in the oven. The oven is now at 250 degrees, so they're ready to go in. So the oven opens up. You'll see in the oven baked potatoes. Now they have already baked. And of course now at 250 degrees, they're just going to be kept warm. It's very important though that the steaks be at room temperature before they go into the oven. I'll run the thermometer cable up and out, and we'll shut the oven door, and we'll wait till it comes up to 120 degrees. If you come over here to the temperature gauge, you see we're starting at about 58.6 degrees. Our receiving unit is rounding it up to 59, and it's set to go alert me when it hits 120 degrees. Again, the steaks rested for about an hour, Salt and pepper and a little light garlic was rubbed on both sides of them. And as you noticed, I had them on a rack so that the hot air could circulate under the steaks too. And we'll come back. I'll show you how you can read the temperature as the temperature in the oven starts to increase. And with the magic of television, we're going to cut now to the remote thermometer. As you can see, the temperature in the meat in the oven is up to 59 degrees. And it's a slow process. Overall, this should take between 30 and 40 minutes to get up to 120 degrees. So now we're up to about 70 degrees. And as you can see, the little screen on the receiver is flashing a very light blue. As we get closer to the 120, it'll flash green. And then as soon as we hit that 120, it'll beep and it'll flash red. Such a cool ThermPro. And so the flashing screen, which was once flashing light blue, is now flashing green because we are approaching the designated temperature of 120 degrees, which you see there on the lower right. So from flashing blue to flashing green. Definitely tells us it's ready. Let's pull them out. All right. I'm going to pull them out of the oven and remove the probe and let them rest for 10 minutes. Let's see what we have. Now at this point, they don't look that great because they haven't been seared yet. But the internal temperature is 120 degrees. We're going to let them rest for 10 minutes. And then because these are sirloins and will be thinly sliced, we're not going to caramelize the fat on the outside in the cast iron frying pans. We're going to go ahead and remove the outside fat right after they've rested. And then we're going to put in hot cast iron skillets and sear the you-know-what out of them. And we'll see what happens next. We will be taking the outside fat off the steaks before we put a light coat of olive oil on them and let them rest another 10 minutes. And then they will be put in a very, very hot cast iron skillet. So this is the procedure. Just getting the fat off. So all the fat's been taken off the outside of the sirloins. We're going to move them aside off the stove and put 2 large cast iron skillets on and get them red hot. While the steaks are resting, I'm going to rub a little bit of olive oil on each side so when they come into that hot pan, it will just sizzle right up. Now, olive oil, usually you can get higher temperature, smoke temperature oils. I think the highest smoke temperature that they make is avocado oil, which I don't have any. But olive oil is okay, and it gives a nice taste. Now, you notice it's already had the pepper and salt rubbed into it. And we're just putting the olive oil, and we're going to do both sides. So it'll be ready to go into the pan. So I'm just putting a drop of oil or two in the bottom of the pan before I get them up to high temperature. you can see how much I used. And this is just on a nice seasoned cast iron pan. We want to make a welcome committee of oil atoms for our sirloins. It's all ready. Now I'm going to reach over here and I'm going to turn this one up on high, this one up on high, and the exhaust fan on high. And now, as you can see, the pan is smoking. And now the meat goes into a really hot cast iron pan. And as you can see from the side of the meat, it is technically already at the rare to medium rare state. We put it in the pan. The pans are smoking hot. And you saw how we treated the pans with oil. Just a very little bit of rub. And the steaks go in. No more than a minute, maybe 2 minutes per side. You should definitely monitor it and see what it looks like. We're turning over the first piece now. You can see that nice, dark, crusty finish on the meat. Gives it that wonderful charcoal type of a flavor. Turning over the second pan. Making it a really beautiful steak, hopefully. Whoops, we'll do better than that. And another thing, it's not just enough to sear either side of the steak. I think it's a really good idea to also turn the steak up on its side and sear the juices into that steak. We want it just to, when we get ready to cut this meat, you'll see how juicy it will be. Baking it first and then searing it preserves the juices. And as you can see, these pans are hot enough to smoke, and that's why you have to have a good ventilating hood overhead when you're doing this. So we're getting the meat all seared up, and as soon as we do all of that, we'll let the meat come back out of the pan and rest for a few more minutes right before we slice it. But we want to be sure that as much as we can, that we sear all the sides of this meat. Now we're pulling it off, and we're going to start cutting in just a minute. So now we're going to slice them against the grain, since they're sirloin. And as you see, medium rare was exactly what we were shooting for. And exactly what we got. Nice hot pink center. So these will all be sliced up like this, and then they'll be served with a salad and a baked potato. And of course, it's almost time to eat. And so at the dinner table with the salad and sour cream and butter, we're serving up the steak, which is sirloin, and a baked potato. Bon appetit!